Thank you so much. Welcome to the Pass It On Network's monthly 50/50 online conversation series. It's very exciting to be together on the threshold of a new year. And because there are many newcomers, allow me just a few words about who we are and what we do. 10 years ago, Dr. Jan Hively and I co-created the Pass It On Network, a grassroots network of positive aging advocates that is now often called by its acronym PION, P-I-O-N. PION champions the rights of older people and contributes to the adaptation of society to the enormous challenges and opportunities of longevity and demographic shifts. In addition to our monthly calls, we run a YouTube channel where you can find all the recordings of past 50/50 organizations. We publish a monthly newsletter called the Pioneer Gazette. We organize regional networks in Canada and a very dynamic one in Southern Africa, and run monthly open house sessions. As we conclude our 10th anniversary year, 2023, we take pride in our global community of pioneers in over 65 countries, addressing critical issues facing older people everywhere. And as we embark on the journey ahead for 2024, we remain steadfast in our mission to facilitate meaningful conversations, share invaluable insights, and collectively shape a future where aging is embraced with dignity and purpose. We'll dedicate our February 50/50 conversation to exploring with you how this will look in the year ahead. Join us in this ongoing dialogue, and let's continue to pass on the torch of knowledge, experience, and resilience to pave the way for a brighter and more inclusive tomorrow for ourselves, our families, and our communities. And I now have great pleasure to pass over to Osnat, who's going to set the context for today's call. Osnat?
So here again, hello everyone. My name is Osnat, and I invite you to join this conversation of discovery and insights. And to start, let me provide some context for our conversation today. One of the highlights of Pass It On Network is identifying universal practices to enhance the lives of older people globally. We've done it for years now. And a few months ago, Moira suggested the Montessori approach for adults. And I had a very surprised reaction. I said, for adults, that's only for children. And she immediately organized a conversation with our guest today, Dr. Cameron Camp. So let me say a few things about Dr. Camp. He's a pioneer in applying the Montessori Inspired Lifestyle approach to older adults living with dementia. And his dedication spans 3 decades, earning international acclaim for his research. Much of it you can find at the Center for Applied Research in Dementia that is rooted in the Montessori principles, and we will provide a link to that. So from small business innovative research projects to being the president of the Adult Development and Aging Division of the American Psychological Association, his expertise is extensive. Dr. Camp continues to share the Montessori dementia intervention knowledge through training globally in Asia, Australia, Europe, and North America. And some of you here are from Africa, and we'll probably can ask him what about Africa. And so what we'll do in the first part is we'll have a conversation with him. We'll ask him a few questions to help us understand the magic behind this innovation and how it can be used even beyond the dementia sphere. So welcome, Cameron. Welcome today to the Pass It On Network 50/50. And maybe you will take the show on the road.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that introduction. Yes, so years ago, when I was fresh out of graduate school, my emphasis was in experimental psychology with a real focus on gerontology and cognition. And so I was working with older adults without dementia, teaching them how to memorize grocery lists and that sort of thing. Moved to New Orleans and began doing work with persons with dementia in adult day centers, and quickly found out that everything that I'd been using in my how to improve your memory tactics, mental imagery, that sort of thing, was useless, was absolutely useless. And so the question was, how can I work with persons with dementia? How can I enable these persons to learn new things, to acquire new skills? And at exactly that same time, my son initially began to attend a Montessori school. And I walked in, I looked around at all the materials and the procedures. I brought in a neuropsychologist friend of mine, and I said, am I crazy, or is this the way forward? It sure looks like it to me. And he said, I think you're right. And then he enrolled his children in the school also. And so, that was the moment that the heavens opened and I heard the angels singing. And so the Montessori approach is a rehabilitative approach. Maria Montessori was one of the first female physicians in Italy, and she focused on pediatrics, but also on rehabilitative medicine. And so the emphasis is not on looking at things like dementia as a disease, but as a disability. So, Osnat, if you take off your glasses, is it difficult for you to see?
Yes.
If you would, please take them off.
Okay.
I hate to tell you this. You have Cameron's disease. It influences the vision. We don't have a cure for it. We're not really sure what causes it. There's a tendency for it to be more prevalent in persons as they get older, but it also shows up sometimes in younger people. I have some drugs I can give you for it. They don't work, and they're very expensive, but ignore the side effects if you can, and come back in 6 months and we'll see how you're doing. Now, see, there's some problems when you have Cameron's disease. You can't, no, keep them off. You can't drive anymore. I'm going to give you a card for Cameron's disease support group, so you can meet with other people who have this disability, this disease, actually. I'm going to give a card to your caregiver also, so that your caregiver can meet with other caregivers of persons with Cameron's disease, because it's hard to take care of someone like you. And you're very ornery. You want to be independent, even though you can't because of your vision problems. And that's about all we can do for you. This is what's happening in physicians' offices around the world at this moment when someone walks in and they have a diagnosis of dementia. The attempts to find a treatment are based on a hypothesis that's failed for the last 3 decades and is still failing. This is kind of crazy. There's the Lakota proverb, a Native American tribe, which says, if you're riding a dead horse, it's good to dismount. But they won't dismount. And so I'm going to ask you to put your glasses on now.
Here they are.
This is a different approach. We have this thing called glasses. I can't cure your Cameron's disease, but I can give you these glasses to help you circumvent the deficits and allow you to drive and to live more normally. How does it feel when you put the glasses on?
Well, it's a huge difference, great improvement.
And I cannot tell you how many times people have said, it's a miracle when we start using Montessori approaches with persons with dementia. When you take a rehabilitation approach, you focus on the abilities that still remain. You focus on what the person can do. Your job is to create environments that enable a person to circumvent their deficits. You know, if you see a ramp going up from the sidewalk to the door of a house, you don't think anything of it. You know, you think obviously there's someone in a wheelchair who lives there, and this ramp enables them to independently get into their house. So what we try to create are cognitive ramps. We try to create external aids and teaching procedures based on the abilities that remain based on Montessori approaches that enable a person to circumvent their deficits. So, for example, my mother-in-law came to live with us for a while. She had Alzheimer's disease, and she came with her son, who was she was living with. He was going to spend the summer at the Cleveland Clinic on an internship. So he leaves. And after 30 minutes, my mother-in-law asked my wife, you know, where's my son? She says, he's at the clinic. He'll be back at 5:30. That satisfied her, but she couldn't remember that because of the short-term memory deficits and dementia. So my wife, a Montessori teacher, writes down in large letters, thick print, because you have to accommodate for visual changes with aging and dementia. Your son is at the Cleveland Clinic. He'll be back at 5:30. She showed it to her mother to make sure that she could read the message, and she could. Then she tapes this to the kitchen countertop. The next time, 20 minutes later, when she says, where's my son? My wife said, you know, there's a message about that. Let's go see. And she walked with her to this location. Location learning is something that's available to people with dementia. It's unconscious, it's automatic, it's effortless. This is how a person with dementia learns where they're supposed to sit if they go to a day center, if they're in residential care, even though no one consciously tries to teach them. And so she walks over with her mother and says, what does this say? She didn't read it for her mother. She had her mother practice the procedure of reading, practice the procedure of going to this location. Her mother read it, says, that's right. Whenever you want to know about your son's coming back, we'll just go here. 30 minutes later, where's my son? Same procedure. An hour later, where's my son? Same procedure. And for the rest of the day, her mom did not ask my wife, where's my son? When her anxiety would rise, she would walk to this location. She would read the message. The message addressed her concerns, her needs. Her anxiety was reduced. And so she's also conditioned, you know, through what we call a CER condition, emotional response, to go to this location when her anxiety rose. So in essence, my wife enabled her mother to reduce her own anxiety, to be able to be freed from constantly worrying about where is my son. And she did it with a piece of paper and a different way of thinking. So my question is, where's the public service announcement about something like this? You know, in 1 minute, we could reduce the stress of caregivers around the world, you know, with a very simple approach. And yet the emphasis is on disease. It's on what a person can't do. It's on the use of drugs. This is crazy. So anyway, that's my soapbox moment. Osnet, I appreciate your help with that.
Yeah, this is well. I'm curious about so many more things. I'm you know that there's something you and I spoke before, because when you were describing to me the magic of Montessori approach for adults, I said, but you were saying, okay, we use it extensively in residential center and assisted living and memory care. And I said, by the time people get there, the profile we have in our mind of a person with dementia is somebody who's completely out of everything, are not able to function in their daily life. They're maybe frail, confused. And yet you're telling me that there's really no point where this approach is no longer effective. So can you say a little bit more what happens in an organized location in the residence, something that we can also maybe take into our own life?
Sure.
Dementia or not.
A good thing to remember is that the Montessori approach exists from birth through high school. So there are interventions, ways of connecting, of engaging, of teaching throughout like the lifespan. So if you want to find a model that can track where a person is across the course of dementia and still be able to develop interventions and engagement, it's the perfect model. And so, we often work with people on the day they die and engage them. We work with family members of persons with dementia in hospice. We say if the person is blind, deaf, comatose, and mute, we still work to engage them. We still let them feel perhaps silk on their skin or smell their favorite cologne or perfume. If the sensory system is all that's left, we go through the sensory system. Can they hear? We always start by asking, what are the abilities that remain? Okay, that's very different than the prototypical approach. The medical approach says, let's look at what's lost. And that gives you a diagnosis and it gives you a stage. And if you've got 15 people with the same mental status exam score, how are you supposed to create 15 personalized plans of care with that information? And the answer is you can't. So this is about knowing the individual. I remember one time there was a woman who was laying flat and mute and unable to speak in hospice. And so they said, she's not there. Okay. So I said, what's her husband's name? And they said, Joe. So I put this in front of her face. And when I did, she goes, I took it down. She's back to where she was. And then I wrote, Sam, put it up, no change. Then I wrote the name of her son, another man's name. I said, she's there. She's there. And they said, why did you write Sam? I said, experimental control. You have to make sure it's the family names that she's responding to. Sorry, it's my training as a experimental psychologist coming out there. But the point is, what abilities remain? So if she can see and she can read, what else could we use to connect with her? What pictures? Once you begin to think this way, it opens up so many doors. I remember I was talking with a woman who was taking care of her husband at home, and he had early onset dementia. And she said, I have all kinds of problems. I keep putting up signs in my house, don't do this, don't do this, don't. He keeps trying to do things. Last week, he went around the neighborhood and collected all of the newspapers in front of people's houses and brought them back home. What am I supposed to do? Okay, and this is prototypical. And I said, first, we don't talk about challenging behaviors in dementia. We talk about responsive behaviors. We assume that behavior is not random and it's in response to an unmet human need. It's our job to find that need. So we start by asking, why is this happening? The answer can never be because they have dementia. How do we know they have dementia? Because this is happening. Circular logic, okay? So why is this happening? My guess is he wants to help. But all he sees are signs which say, don't do this, don't do this. And you're asking him to figure out, this man with dementia, what he should do next. And you're playing whack-a-mole. Why don't you have signs which say, please help with this? Find out what he can do. Find tasks that he can do. Give him some structure and some routine so that he's able to fulfill that need to be able to help with the abilities that he still has. And we can do this, with external aids. We can have a person with advanced dementia still be able to set a table. If you have a placemat with the outline of the fork and the knife and the spoon, and it's just a matter of not guessing where they go, but matching on a template. Okay. What abilities remain? So, we have an abilities system that we use for persons with advanced dementia to look at what abilities remain. Can they use a template? Can they read if the print is large enough, thick, I've seen people who can't talk who can still read. It's an unconscious, automatic, effortless habit. Take a look at the printing underneath Osnat's video and try not to read her name. You can't not read her name. It's such an ingrained habit. When we look at a word, we read it. And so we see people who have difficulty speaking, but they can still read. And they can actually read out loud, even though they can't generate on their own words. And so we can use this. It's a matter of rethinking our priorities. And it's also a matter of, in terms of just general things, what can we do as a society to be able to keep this from happening, as much as possible? I mean, if you want to really help with cognitive capacity in older adults, think about things like reducing pollution, which is something Peter Whitehouse writes about, reducing lead in the water. The whole idea that it's our individual responsibility to keep away dementia by eating blueberries. I think we need to rethink that. I was at a conference where they were talking about ways to prevent dementia, and I said, please, everything you're talking about should be done by people with dementia. More antioxidants, more exercise, routines, purpose in life. Don't look at the development of dementia as a personal failure. And don't stop doing things that keep you healthy and fit just because you get a diagnosis. We need to rethink this entirely, and also think in terms of societal responsibilities, as opposed to leaving all of this on individuals. Anyway, that's Peter Whitehouse and Danny George talk about that in their book pretty extensively. But I'm a big believer in that also. So yeah, that's, again, soapboxes grow up underneath my feet. I apologize.
Oh, so much for soapboxes. Actually, one of the things that we've noticed in recent years, so there are many people who have been displaced due to environmental events, like wars or economic stressors or societal pressure. Even moving closer to children or moving to another place in the world. And even for all the people without cognitive disabilities,
yes,
the loss of routine that you were saying, routine is so important. The loss of routines can lead to a swift decline in cognitive function, like sometimes overnight. Somebody who just moved because they had to evacuate the conflict zone, moving to another place, and all of a sudden they can't even boil water. So is there a Montessori first aid kit to immediately reduce anxiety and restore kind of a sense of self?
Well, Montessori did write about a thing that she called the White Cross. And she was very interested in developing teams of physicians and nurses and Montessori teachers that would go into crisis areas and work at helping to restore some semblance of routine, of being able to, again, assess capacities that people had. We talk about finding meaningful roles and purpose. And what we're talking about here is not just for persons with dementia. This is a way of living. This is a way of thinking that applies to all persons. We just happen to apply it to persons with dementia. She just happened to apply it to children, but it's a way of living. It's based on the values of respect and dignity and equality. It's about being able to give structure and the cognitive ramps that people need, with or without cognitive impairment, to be able to live more normalized life. And so it's about, I remember I was talking with a group in California during the height of the first COVID crisis. And they had to move half of their residents in memory care to a new neighborhood. because the other half had to be quarantined. They had COVID. If you can imagine the disruption for those residents and staff going to a completely new place with dementia. And they asked me, you know, what can we do? I mean, this is total chaos. And I said, when are they coming back? They said, in 30 days. I said, get a big calendar. 30 days until we return. 29 days until we return. And then start planning how you're going to celebrate the return. What are you going to do when you get to the return? Yeah. Human beings need hope. Human beings we have a fundamental need to be able to look at the future with hope. Okay. And when you can give any piece of that to people who have been thoroughly disrupted in their lives, it's a life preserver. We say it's a little thing that's a big thing. Okay. And so, you know, what can we do? And also, we're at our best when we're serving others. And so, you know, one thing we do a lot of when we work with persons with dementia is we see what social causes they want to support. So I've seen people with dementia putting together, you know, toiletry kits for people who live in homeless shelters, or making dog biscuits for puppies in a rescue shelter. Okay. And they say, we want to be able to help those who are less fortunate than we are. And so how can we give meaningful roles to people to help each other and to help others, especially in the midst of disruption of lives? You know, how can we give purpose and meaning during crisis? It's a way of thinking. And I tell you, a medical approach is not going to help you in the least in that situation. Okay. They may put a Band-Aid on your wound, but they won't give you a reason to wake up.
Mm.
And so this is what we are about. And when I'm in France, I always say, you know, I see these words, liberté, égalité, fraternité. Why should a citizen lose these because of a diagnosis? So this is an issue of human rights, and the rights of persons with dementia, the rights of older adults, and the rights of human beings. And surprise, surprise, Maria Montessori was a human rights advocate and a worker for peace, and organized peace conferences, and was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times. So if you want to follow a good leader, I recommend that you learn more about her.
Yeah, you know, I definitely whetting my appetite to learn more of how to use it in my own life with my own community. I no doubt there's some other people around this call that would like to know more. We said that you train around the world.
Yes.
Where in the world somebody can find how to learn how to use it, even
Sure.
if they're not professionals?
Oh, sure. So we have multiple online courses. We have a number of brief, like 1 to 2 minute videos that we've made specifically for caregivers of persons who are taking care of somebody with dementia in the home. Jamie Shelton, who's on this webinar, who is our marketing director, can guide people to those. Many of these are free resources, as well as some that are paid. But yeah, online coursework. And then we do training in person. I'll be in France in February, and we have training partners in a number of countries: Belgium, France, Italy. Alzheimer's Australia has a lot of resources on the Montessori approach for dementia. We worked in collaboration with them. There's a really nice PDF that they have called Relate, Motivate, and Appreciate, which we developed specifically again for family caregivers. We've done some webinars with the New Zealand Diversional Therapy Association. We have a training partner in Canada, one in Brazil, We've done work in Singapore, and a lot of our work has been translated in a number of different languages. So,
Okay. Wow, it's already we're at time, but I have one other question before we open it up to conversation with our audience. Is what aspects of this approach continue to surprise you?
yeah, you know, intellectually, I know that the person with dementia ought to be able to do interesting things, but when I actually see the examples, I still am very pleasantly surprised. When I see a woman with dementia who wants to ride on a Harley Davidson, even though she's in a wheelchair, and is able to do that when the staff in the town of Montpellier are able to find a bicycle club. And then when she says, next I want to skydive, a hang glide above the Mediterranean, and they send me a photo. When I see photos of dementia-friendly church services that are now being conducted so that they can more fully participate and engage. When I hear about the beer-making clubs in Oregon, and then when people in Switzerland hear about it, they challenge and come up with their own beer-making clubs. It always continues to amaze and delight me. I see Peter has a question.
Well, before we move to Peter, I would like to, first of all, thank you for all this personal account. I found it very hopeful. I think many others have already too. And I would like to present a question to all of you, and you can answer that one in the chat, or raise your hand, your digital hand. You can find it in the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. How can the Montessori approach be useful in addressing ageism? Because we know that the society has a lot of bias against people who are not the norm, who are not normal. Maybe they have disability one kind or another. If we're saying that dementia is a disability, how can we use Montessori approach to address ageism? What kind of steps need to be taken to ensure that there's a positive change of how society perceives older adults through Montessori, with dementia or not with dementia? So this is a question I'm posing to everybody here, and we're going to move into our conversation. And Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, Cameron, and everybody in the Pass It On network. As you know, I have strong feelings about being cautious about the word ageism. I think what Montessori does is it brings the developmental perspective to us all throughout our entire life course. And our schools are like Montessori, and that what Cameron said just a few minutes ago about people with dementia providing service to others is absolutely essential. It's allowing the person who's supposed to be the care recipient to be a caring person. And I think if more older people were more caring people, and this sounds ageist, but I'm going to say it anyway, and thought about future generations and the future of older people, of younger people, to allow them to become older people, that would be the most important thing we could do. Let me just say, I put in the chat, I think Cameron is an absolute pioneer. I also would like to briefly mention Naomi Feil, who died, yes. I don't know, it's been recognized and Pass It On with validation therapy, because she's also captured some very poignant moments in this deep interpersonal relationships. And then say, this is the year, folks. We have 4 films coming out that capture this message. Memory, Peter Sarsgaard, I advised him, got the Best Actor award in Venice for portraying a caring person with dementia. Human Forever, a film out of the Netherlands about long-term care facilities that are innovative. The Eternal Memory out of Chile about people that were involved with the Pinochet government and intermingling of the cultural dementia. It's rich, and Alive Inside is coming out with the power of music. So this is the year that Cameron's going to get all the accolades he deserves, because he's a pioneer. But now it's hitting the mainstream. So this is the time for Pass It On, to pass it on some messages that are really powerful against the dominant narratives about aging. Sorry for taking so long, but good to be with you all.
Thank you, Peter.
Yes, it's interesting that Montessori created a term to describe what happens when the person and the environment fit. When the environment supports a person's capacities and enables them to circumvent their deficits, and she called this process normalization. And a Montessori teacher will say something like, the classroom normalized around November, when you start in September. And basically what we try to do is to create normalizing environments and experiences for persons with dementia. I remember I was working at a place called Menorah Park in Cleveland, and we were visited by a group of Japanese horticulturalists. They thought they were coming to a park instead of a continuing care retirement community. But since I was the only person who could say Ohayo gozaimasu, I was elected to be their tour guide. So I took them to the different dementia units. I showed them persons with dementia doing intergenerational work, teaching children, how to do things like use tools and to hang up their own clothes and to set a table. They saw persons with dementia in reading groups. And at the end, we came to the front of the building and they said, okay, now show us the people with dementia. And I said, you've been looking at them for the last, hour and a half. And they were expecting the typical narrative, as Peter called it. And they saw something very different. And so this is the idea in terms of challenging the stereotypes. People have to see. And a person with dementia has to see for themselves what they're still capable of doing. And it has to be made front and center. I was in front of the AARP governing board some years ago, and I was on a stage, and I got out on my knees, literally. And I said, please, create a 60-second public service announcement. Show a person with dementia who says, hey, I'm you. I'm just like you. I have the same needs. I don't remember as well as I did, but I can still do things. I said, put that message out there. It didn't happen, but at least I pled literally my case. So people have to see it. All right. That's the only way, because they won't believe the words. People don't believe anything I say until they see it. That's why we show a lot of videos of these persons with dementia. A woman with advanced dementia who has a stroke and paralyzed on half of her body, who using a cognitive ramp, a piece of wood with nails driven through it, where she can put a carrot on it and then peel it with one hand so she can make carrots for the vegetable soup for the community. They have to see that to believe that if you think this way, you can actually give people purpose and normalization, all that stuff. They have to see it. That's the only way. People won't believe anything I say. They'll have to see it.
Yeah.
And that's my 2 cents. I'm sorry.
Oh, I think everybody's a little dumbfounded here, because it's maybe a little bit of a surprise and a paradigm shift. Valerie in Wales, what's on your mind?
I 100% agree. And not only that, I have a channel where I would love you to post these videos. Learn with Grandma is in 51 countries. I guess you're from the States. So if you join Learn with Grandma USA, then show people exactly what you're saying. We older people, I'm 82 and a half now, and we older people do have skills and knowledge. And the more we use those skills and knowledge and pass it on to the younger generations, the more able we are to continue using those skills and knowledge.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
join the group, be my friend. Let's see if we can't do something together.
Thank you,
That's why I
Valerie.
have Nellie and Jamie on this also. They'll be able to make that connection, Valerie. So thank you very much.
Looking forward to
Sylvia
meeting
from
you properly.
Argentina.
Thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation. Not your presentation, your sharing about all what you do and what happens with people. And in response to this question, Osnat posed us, ageism. I really, from what I feel is that with this, which is an entirely different approach, so much based on abilities and hope and human potential flourishing, I think it would be wonderful if we don't speak anymore about ageism, racism, feminism, and so on, and focus on that exactly. That is something that really resonated with me. And when you say people don't believe in words, we tend not to believe in words anymore because most of the time they are devoid of content. That's why we need to see. But you have those examples. Where are the dementia people or people with dementia? That's absolutely wonderful. And something more is that I come from the system thinking community. And Buckminster Fuller, a philosopher, you probably know, yes, he said that if you want to change a system, a culture, don't go against the existing culture. Create a new one. And when people begin to see, when people see it, live it, one day they totally forgot about the old one, something like that. I cannot quote because I don't have it here right now, but that's the idea behind this. So something else, in system thinking, there exists a concept that is isomorphism. The same forms appear here and in so much more in different areas of activity, and also at the society as a large. And you address that, and you say that as a society as a large, we are promoting dementia instead of nurturing abilities and so on. So I'm really grateful for these sharings and all the opportunities that it brings. So thank you, all of you. Yeah.
Yes, if we build it, they will come. Yeah.
Thank you, Sylvia. And Maria, and then Isaac.
Yes, I've been working in the field of memory care facility, and I just started 4 months ago in a new facility after being working for 17 years in another facility. I started working with my Montessori approach. I got the certification, and I experienced how wonderful program is to help our residents with dementia. I experienced so many good things from them, from the low function to the high functioning. I left the facility after 17 years because I didn't have the support from other people to help me to succeed in the program. And now I'm in a facility, been working 4 months, and I start my program with Montessori. And my wish and my goals is to certify my facility here in Houston and the Clear Lake area. So yes, I'm experienced very good things about our program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Moira. Isaac, and then Jen.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Before I say anything, I just want to say how lovely it is to get the chance to speak with everyone here. Yeah, it's just very lovely that, we get to talk about these things, and it means a lot to me. So just wanted to say thank you. So I guess what I wanted to say is that at the heart of what we're all talking about, I think, is just that when it comes to, by virtue of living on the planet, I guess, by virtue of everybody living together here, it becomes a not a responsibility, but it becomes very fundamentally important that when we carry ourselves, that we make sure that everyone else around us is also cared for. In the essence that how they carry their lives, they should be able to carry it to hopefully complete, but definite fruition, and that that what they're able to do and how they're able to carry themselves remains just as fruitful of an adventure as everybody else. And I think that that's something that we should all strive to do. Especially, I was reminded of that when we were talking about this with Dr. Cameron Camp. But also, you can kind of see how it sort of transcends to a lot of different fields that involves just interacting with each other. And again, just by virtue of living here and sharing a house and having people live next to me, it becomes important to just, instead of building instead of just building in the moment, we build so that we can carry ourselves moving forward. So I don't think what I said really had any coherence to it, but I think it's just something, that makes me think a lot about, the things that we're doing, whether it relates to dementia or anything else for that matter, and how relevant it is to, be cognizant of all the experiences that everyone goes through, in order to make sure that because again, we all have lived experiences, we all have certain dreams and needs and desires, and we should do our best to fit our world and our community and society to better advance the potentiality of everyone, so nobody gets left behind. Yeah,
I remember I was doing 3 days of training in the south of France at the University of Montpellier. At the end of the 3rd day, a student raised her hand and said, "Now I get it. This is not about dementia. This is about bringing civilization back to civilization." And I said, "Yeah, now you get it. That's the deep meaning and the deep goal." Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I want to echo exactly what Cameron just said, which is that, when I was working in city planning, the point was to focus on the assets of the community. When I was a mother, it was very important to emphasize Montessori approach, beginning with preschool. And now in the Pass It On network, I feel that spreading this kind of consciousness about the fact that we need to be building on strengths rather than always focusing on meeting people's needs. It's absolutely the consciousness raising kind of basic value that is needed lifelong. And I particularly appreciated Peter's comments that led us in that direction, as well as Dr. Camp's. And thank you so much for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Jen. Verna, and then Peter.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for this. Just by clarification, I'm Verna Cavey in Denver. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I call myself an elder advocate. I've been working in the field for about a decade. I'm in a resident-directed community. So I'm thinking internalized ageism story. And
Verna, we can't hear you very well now.
Oh.
You need to speak to the screen.
Because we are a community, and respect and dignity and equality is important, then we really are a vital community, and we have gotten rid of so much of the ageism. So you can call it different names. You can call it Montessori. You could call it resident directed and empower residents. But the central idea combined with community is very important. A couple quick things. I often tease younger people who work in the aging field and ask them, why do you work with old people? And, they're wonderful, and they give me different answers. But I asked one young man in Scotland recently, and he said, we just say, oh, it's just the old people. He said, I just came back with working with a 29-year-old with early onset Alzheimer's. And he said, I tell my young friends, pay attention. It's not quote unquote, just the old people. And I thought that was extremely helpful. The other thing, and I guess it's more of a question for you, Cameron Kim, is we have a situation here where the highly intelligent, proactive, vital people, when diagnosed, a number of them have self-starved rather than live with Alzheimer's. And it's disturbing. Right now, there's a woman wandering our halls, and when you ask her how she is, she said, I'm bored. And she has asked her daughter to let her go, meaning, can I self-starve? And her daughter, who's very religious, said no. I can't bear it. Every day I pass her. And, we're a really good community, and everybody has tried everything, but she just wants to die. And I don't know how I can help.
Yeah. It's always about knowing the person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, what is it that they find relevant and important in their lives? So a good thing is to go into their past. What is it that in the past brought them joy? What is it that brought them meaning? Many times when a person talks that way, it's because they think that the diagnosis means that they can no longer have that kind of a role, that they no longer can feel that joy, have that purpose in their life. And without that, their reasoning is, why should I go on living? And so it's about finding those wells of life that were there in the past, and then asking, how can we create the cognitive ramps, the modifications to enable them to still connect with that again, and to express that again, given the capacities that they have. I knew of a guy with advanced dementia in a nursing home. He was part of a group of communities, independent living assisted. They were making chef salads for people living in a homeless shelter. And his job was to take the stems off of the leaves of spinach. Okay, and that was what his capacity was. But that was his way to still contribute and to help others. And the other people, independent living assisted, recognized that this was his way to be part of the community that was coming together to help others who were less fortunate than themselves. So I offer that as like an example of how you find the fit with the person and their needs and what makes them feel whole. Look at what they can do and then try to connect those dots together. It's detective work, but that would be the path.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sure, no worries.
Thank you, Cameron. Go to Peter in a second, but I want to just bring back some of the conversation back to Facet Network and how we thrive here to make respect, dignity, and meaning for all older people around the world, not only for ones with disability. And with what we learned today about Montessori, how useful and what kind of use would you do with that in your communities, in your efforts to level the playing ground, to advocate for more human rights for older adults, to bring, to change society perception about what older adults are. We know that older adults have a lot to contribute, but it's not necessarily seen this way in society. And sometimes how older adults present it could be a deterring a way or presentation for younger people, the way they see older adults. So how can older adults themselves can use Montessori to advance the agenda of reduce the perceptions of society about older adults? So this is something that I'm very interested in hearing more from the audience here, and I'm going to pass it to Peter Whitehouse to say his piece.
So again, an interesting question. To me, it's about learning. It's about learning together. And that's what older adults really can have their place in society to help younger generations appreciate the times. And that allows me to then bridge to what I was going to say. What Cameron said, what Jan said about the fact that this is part of a much bigger conversation than about aging or older people or younger people. This is a conversation we're having today about the future of our species on the planet. And I say two things, which I'll just repeat quickly. Alzheimer's is far more important than Alzheimer's because everybody makes that a big isolated problem and tends to focus on cure. But in actual fact, it's a way into rediscovering what it means to be human beings in today's times, which is the only way we're going to change civilization. And the other thing I say is the greatest threat to the people of the quality of life of people with dementia is the climate change, because they can't move away from it. They need our help, but also it's the greatest threat to all of us. So I couldn't agree more with this idea that we've got to and pass it on, in my opinion, trying to figure out what it really means to be an elder, what it means to be a future ancestor, and make those contributions that through time older people have done, and asking ourselves as older people what we're going to do about ageism by behaving in the world in a way that the world embraces us and the wisdom we have the potential to create.
Right.
Sorry, Cameron. I'm not.
No worries.
We're having a storm together here.
No worries, Peter. My academic advisor, Roy Lackman, when his first job out of graduate school is at the University of Hawaii, Hilo, and he studied the effects of a tsunami there. One of the only psychologists to study the effects of tsunamis on behavior. And when the Christmas tsunami hit Southeast Asia, he was in his 80s and was fast-tracked to get for a grant from the National Science Foundation. Only psychologist in the country with experience studying tsunamis and human behavior. One of the things that he found was that there were different groups. One group, for example, had been thoroughly modernized and incorporated in a modern society, and another group had stayed indigenous and independent and kept to old traditions. That second group, when the ocean moved out before the tsunami waves came in, they went to the elders, and the elders said, from oral tradition, when the ocean goes out, we climb high. And they survived. The tribes that had been thoroughly modernized were out there at the ocean with their cell phones saying, hey, come look at this. That's a parable. That is an example of the danger for society in general that can occur when we ignore the wisdom and the contributions of older adults for society as a whole. So I just thought I would throw that in there also. This is about survival of the species, and we ignore the capacities of older adults at our own risk.
We're going to go into breakout rooms of 2s and 3s for 5 minutes. It's not a lot of time, but the topic that I'd like you to share, so that's like more about headlines to share among yourself, is how can you use the Montessori approach to build bridges with others so they can understand the value that Cameron and Peter and Jen have just presented to us of older adults. We all agree that older adults have value. It doesn't always work when we say we have value. Not seeing is believing, and we're not able to show it all the time. So how can we use Montessori approach with what you know now, not being an expert, to build those bridges? Welcome back. Hope you had a brief exchange and useful one. If you have any thoughts about it, we won't have, in the next 3 minutes, we won't have time to hear them, but we're going to continue to open for another 15 minutes after this, and we'll record those 15 minutes too. But in the meantime, you can also put some comments in the chat. And I am going to do 2 things now. The first one is ask Cameron for a very brief book ending of this session, from where it started to where it is now. How would you bookend it? And then I have some public announcements that are important. So go ahead.
I guess, 2 things, I guess. One is to emphasize that this is about a way of living. And I think Isaac was referring to that in his comments. This is about being human and to be fully human. We apply it to persons with dementia. We apply it to people without dementia. This is how we should treat each other. Maria Montessori said, everything you do for me, you take away from me. And that's a very different way of thinking. A very different, that's a paradigm change. That's a sea change. And so that's something to think about. And the second is, Catherine and I were talking about the need to be a bit bloody-minded, to use a term from the British, to be able to say at some point, that stereotype that you just showed is a bunch of crap, and it's not true. I was telling her that there's a woman, Christine Bryden from Australia, who has written a lot about dementia from the inside. And she has a number of books. One of them is Nothing About Us Without Us. She is a strong advocate of including persons with dementia in these conversations. And then there is a woman who helped create the Dementia Alliance International. And Dementia Alliance International is a group of people with dementia around the world who are advocating for the human rights of persons with dementia. And they're very strong advocates. And the woman who founded that was giving a presentation in London. And she was at the podium, and when she finished, she heard a physician in the front row say, she doesn't look like a person with dementia. And she came back to the podium and looked at him and said, and you, sir, don't look like an asshole. So a bit of bloody mindedness can go a long way. I'm just going to put that out there.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you for a really lively presentation and discussion. I want to announce a few public service announcements. We're really interested in what you have to say. You always have to say some interesting stuff in the feedback survey. So I put the link in the chat. The recording will be available in about a week, by the end of next week, in our YouTube channel, as well as a highlights letter post this conversation today that all of you will receive with the most important points and some other helpful links you can follow and learn more about the topic. And last thing is just a brief idea about our next 50-50 conversation, which will take place on the 12th of February, 2024, at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, US. And in this session, we're going to look back at our 10th anniversary, which was 2023, and look forward into the future and what's next for Pass It On Network and for all of us. So please come back, and this is going to be not brainstorming, but a collaboration of all of us of what do we want next year to look like. And this was the public service announcement. We're going to be open for another 10 or 15 minutes. Before that, I'd like to pass the microphone back to Moira for any comments you have for today.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Osnat. And thank you to everybody for being here. I think 2024 must really be a year where we pull together and where we stretch ourselves to incorporate all the organizations that we know and collaborate and have an exponential effect, because we're all working so hard in our own areas. And I think we need to spend more time spreading our wings and collaborating with other organizations. And that's what it's about, because then we can swell the ranks of people, of older people around the world, and really start making an impact, because it really is through older people, through using their strengths, that we're going to make advances. The more silent we are, the less people are going to pay attention to us. And the more we pull together and the more we can just collaborate and create this exponential effect, the better it will be for all of us and the faster we will advance. So I really look forward to seeing you all here on the 12th of February to help us plan that, to see where we can go, how we can go, and how we can do it all faster and with more impact. Thank you so much. And thank you, Osnat. And thank you so much, Cameron, for being with us tonight. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. This is the formal end of the call. If you're welcome to stay for another 15 minutes, we're going to talk about anything and everything, and maybe even some of the stuff that happened in your breakout rooms, or anything else that you'd like to speak about that has to do with our mission. So,
well, I'd like to kick off with that, if I may. Cameron, I really do want to see those films. So I think the more we can show people that we older people have got skills and knowledge and we can pass it on, and it will empathize with people. So be bloody minded. Do it. I meant to say was that Isaac Cameron, you are a very young person for the rest of us, and I'd really like to know your thoughts on how you would like to get old.
Me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
Me.
sorry. I don't know. So I guess just to start, hmm.
Okay, I'll rephrase the question. What is your dream? The young man I'm going to see in Uganda, I didn't know what to say to him because he was a tall young man, and I'd never met an African that close to before. We don't have that very many of them in Wales. But I said, "What is your dream?" He told me what his dream was, to teach teachers all over Uganda how to use the internet. And I said, "I'll show you a way," which was to start off not by my buying him a house, buying him a car, paying his salary, and all those things which he thought I could do, but I couldn't. What I said was, ask your head teacher if you can run a workshop. And from that, and from the connections that I'd got in Uganda, we were able to get him started. And now he's got his own house overlooking Lake Victoria. He's a big man who talks to ministers, and I'm looking forward to seeing him again. So what is your dream?
Well, I guess it definitely does tie into what we spoke about today. It's just the desire to uh carry ourselves through our days in a way that's cognizant and receptive to everybody and everybody's lived experiences. Um, and it kind of ties into what I wanted to mention as well, that, in talking about, more ageist principles and ageism, it's not like when you turn old that you just become like a blank slate. You carry your lived experiences. You have you, certain opinions about things. You have all of these experiences that you're carrying with you. And when it comes, when I've sort of seen how, so I work with older adults in terms of technology.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So when I see sort of these things where older adults can't use phones or computers or things like that, you know, when there's certain technology that you use, you have skills that can carry over to then help you learn these new things. If you have experiences with engineering, you have an amazing ability and talent to break things apart and then put them back together. So it applies to things like using a computer and figuring out how, functionalities of a phone or smartphone. So I guess all that to say is, which I'm kind of also, I've been struggling with at the moment because I don't know how it's going to be possible, but I just love for everyone to sort of see that, like kind of how Dr. Cameron was talking about how when it comes to developing the foundations that we stand on, that it's nurturing and caring for us. Because instead of just kind of putting everything out and sort of building everything and hoping that everything makes sense in the future, the building's going to come down. So I would just love to see that frank attitude of okay, let's see what are these things that you're experiencing. Okay, here's what we can do to make this better or make this more accessible for you. I said a lot, but yeah, that's what I would love. I would just love that, which I don't see now, but I would love it. Yeah.
Adele, can I put you on the spot? This is something really up your alley. Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, you are putting me on the spot. Isaac, it's very interesting to hear you talk about helping older people use technology, because as an older person myself, and I use the term older person, but not old, I spend a lot of my time, virtually all of my time, helping older people work with technology. And I find that as doing it as an older person, they look at me and they say, if you can do it, I can do it. So it's very much role modeling, which is something that came up in our breakout room that we talked about. We have to demonstrate as older people, we have to demonstrate that we still have these capabilities, that we can still contribute. I guess it goes, really to what Dr. Camp was saying about we focus on what we can do, not what we can't do. So when I'm working with seniors who say to me, oh, I could never learn this, I say, yes, you can. Say, maybe it's going to take us a little bit longer, but with patience, tell me what it is you'd like to be able to do with this, and we will enable you to do that. So it's a question of enabling people to use the technology. But I think technology is so important for all of us to take advantage of the different things that are around us. I'm not sure if that's what you were looking for, but that's what I have to offer.
This is a really interesting point, and I'm going to put another person on the spot, and it's Malebo.
Good. I relinquish the spot.
Yeah. Malebo, can I ask you where you are in? Technology is not necessarily in the forefront, and how else could we look at this? And you're on mute.
Well, I don't see the world anywhere in the world where technology is not important. So for me, having been inspired in 1999 already when I went to a conference, the International Federation for Older Persons conference in Montreal, and seeing 80-year-olds and, older persons going to computers, sending emails, I thought when I grow older, I want to be like them. And that is something that I'm carrying with. And in the breakaway group with the lady that just spoke, I indicated how different it was for me and my colleague who was not interested in knowing and understanding and following technology, that she was disrespected by colleagues, and the ageism was just so blatant, whereas they would come to me and I was resourceful. So they need to continue learning. They need to be role models so that people can see that not all older persons need assistance. We have a contribution to make as older persons. So based on the presentation today, the starting point already is going into the videos that are available and starting to share with other people. And I think in that way, people will have access to information that they may not necessarily have, because we do not have some of the advanced services that are offered elsewhere. And so the videos are going to be beneficial for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Osna, if I could share my screen.
Let's see. Yes.
Okay, so we were doing work with persons with type 2 diabetes who also had dementia, trying to live independently at home. And so what we did was we gave them iPads and we connected them via Skype to nurse educators to help them use external aids to track their blood sugar testing and their diet and their exercise. And we had to train these people over the phone on how to use an iPad for the first time. So let's see, I'm going to do share screen. And so, for example, first thing we did was we got rid of all of the unnecessary icons, except for the Skype. We would also put, stop sharing, there we go, okay. We would also put like great big buttons where the buttons were, because you have a black button on a black piece of plastic that you can't see. All of the letters are raised plastic small letters that are the same color as the background, and no one can see those. So we had to like create cognitive ramps on the iPad itself so people would know where to hit the start, where to hit the close. And so, Isaac, what I'm saying is that there are ways to modify technology to make it more accessible to people with disabilities, cognitive, physical, otherwise. We also had to give people styluses, because if you have diabetes, you're going to be affecting the extremities. And so sometimes when they would hit the icon with their finger, it wouldn't kick off the icon. So we had to use a stylus. Okay. But we learned a lot in that particular study about modifying the technology so that it was still usable, and also how to teach people, in this case, older adults with dementia and type 2 diabetes, how to effectively use it. So that's a way of saying that there's a path forward, Isaac. And it involves rehabilitation. It involves universal design. It involves design for disabilities and human factors, person, machine interaction, interface systems, and that can be applied in a number of different ways. So I hear what you're saying. But it is possible to do it.
Thank you, Osnat. Just to follow up on what Dr. Camp was saying, although that didn't generate my original hand up, but I'll come back to that. The second point, we've been doing some similar things like that at Baycrest, Dr. Camp. I've been working with individuals who've never seen an iPad before. I was working with someone who I'm sure learned how to count on an abacus. So it was really quite a technology leap. And we did exactly what you're talking about. We cleaned up the screen, we highlighted what they needed to know, and just focused on that and not everything else. And that was really very effective. But the reason I originally raised my hand was something that Malebo said that struck a chord when she said this was something she wanted to do when she grew up. I was working with a woman who, when I started working with her, was 94, and I worked with her for 2 years. She would drive to my house, she would bring her laptop and her cell phone, and she would say, teach me how to use these things. She was a very intelligent woman and very determined. And I looked at her one day and I said, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. And she looked at me and she said, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. So, we can all role model different things for different people.
And Isaac.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me speak with everyone. I hope I don't take up too much time, but I think let's see, how do I want to phrase it? It's what Dr. Cameron Camp said was very interesting to me, because it sort of makes you think about technology and how it's been evolving. And again, it can apply to, technology is like a reflection of other things that we see. So cultural context and how things can evolve at a very rapid pace. So but for example, I think a lot about like a smartphone, like I have mine here, and how it has a lot of functionality. How if I drag my finger down on the left side, it brings up a different menu than if I dragged it up on the right side. and how tapping it and then also double tapping, and then, you know, there's so much functionality that, you know, and it's the same thing when you go on a website, you see all these menus and they might have slides of images moving across. For a person who might struggle a bit more with trying to maneuver their way around these, you know, these circumstances, it's really overwhelming, and they lose a little bit. You know, if a website's too overwhelming for them, they might not be able to spend the time to get the information they need from it. And then also, especially when you think about the COVID pandemic, how a lot of services went online, like banking and healthcare. For a person who may not have the tools needed, like the ramp that we were talking about, if that isn't available to them, they're basically being cut off from getting the services that they need. Which again, I bring back to just how important it is to always be aware of, okay, let's see, if we do this, okay, who might struggle with this? Okay, this, that, then, okay, maybe we can change it so it's this way. Like, for example, if there's a website, maybe you have like a dementia friendly website. I'm not sure what that would look like, but the idea is to make the options available for a person so that we aren't leaving them completely in the dark, you know, because by leaving them in the dark, they aren't able to contribute to society, and we need their input, you know, by again being a person of the planet, their input's very valuable. So but yeah, that's all. Thank you for letting me talk.
So Isaac, you just described your dream.
I hope so.
Wow, what a place to conclude our call. So I'm going to stop recording now.